Welcome back to Whispered Tales, where stories shape confidence and words unlock power. Today's journey is called English for Smart People, a smarter, calmer way to speak with clarity and confidence.
Most people think learning English is about memorizing grammar rules or vocabulary lists. But here's the reality. Smart people approach English strategically, using their brains efficiently instead of forcing their tongues through tedious drills. The key difference is understanding that English is a tool for thinking, reasoning, and communicating, not just a school subject. Smart learners focus on pattern recognition. They don't try to memorize every word or rule. They notice how words combine, how sentences flow, and how ideas are expressed naturally. For example, instead of learning the word astonished in isolation, they observe its use in phrases like, "I was astonished by the news," or "her reaction left me astonished." By studying context and patterns, the brain learns words faster and retains them longer. Another strategy is prioritizing input over output initially. Listening and reading come first. Smart learners immerse themselves in English audio, podcasts, articles, or books. They pay attention not only to vocabulary, but also tone, style, and sentence structure. This builds an internal model of English in the brain. When they start speaking, their tongue has a clear map to follow, making expressions smooth and natural. Efficiency is key. Instead of spending hours on rote repetition, they integrate English into daily life. While cooking, commuting, or exercising, they narrate thoughts in English. While reading news, they summarize internally in English. Every small, intentional habit strengthens neural pathways, training the tongue without extra effort. Smart learners also focus on core grammar structures first. They don't obsess over every rule. Instead, they master patterns that appear frequently in real conversation, such as verb tenses for expressing time, conditionals for reasoning, and connectors for linking ideas. Once these foundations are solid, more advanced structures are easier to acquire naturally. Finally, they understand the psychology of mistakes. Errors are not failures, they are opportunities for learning. Each mistake strengthens neural pathways, teaches alternative expressions, and builds confidence. By embracing mistakes strategically, smart learners accelerate fluency while reducing fear and hesitation. By learning English this way, strategically, contextually, and efficiently, you'll spend less time memorizing and more time thinking and communicating effectively. The focus is always on building a smart, functional relationship with the language that works in real life. One of the most important habits that separates smart English learners from average ones is thinking directly in English. Instead of translating from their native language, they train their brains to process ideas, plan sentences, and reason in English. This shortcut drastically reduces hesitation, increases speed, and makes speech sound natural and confident.
The first step is internal narration. Throughout the day, practice describing your actions, thoughts, and surroundings in English. While making breakfast, mentally say, "I'm cracking the eggs carefully. I hope the pan is hot enough. I need to stir continuously so the eggs cook evenly." This simple exercise may seem small, but it builds the habit of thinking in English automatically. Over time, your brain begins to process English ideas before your tongue even moves. Visual thinking is another powerful tool. When imagining events or planning tasks, picture them in your mind and describe them in English. For example, if you plan a trip, think, "I need to pack my suitcase. I'll bring 2 shirts, 1 jacket, and some toiletries. I should check the weather for the destination." Your brain links visual images with English words, creating strong neural pathways that allow your tongue to speak fluidly without pauses or translation. Mind mapping can amplify this effect. Write down an idea in the center of a page and branch out related concepts, all in English. For instance, if your topic is healthy lifestyle, branch out exercise, diet, sleep, stress management. Under each branch, add sentences or phrases in English. I do yoga every morning. I avoid sugary snacks, and so on. This trains your brain to organize ideas in English logically, making your speech coherent and smart. Smart learners also practice self-questioning in English. Ask yourself questions and answer them internally. For example, what did I learn today? Answer, I read an article about climate change. I learned that deforestation increases global temperatures and affects wildlife. This habit mirrors real conversations, preparing your brain to respond quickly and naturally during interactions. Mental rehearsal of conversations is a critical technique. Imagine scenarios like ordering at a restaurant, attending a meeting, or introducing yourself at a networking event. Mentally run through the dialogue in English, including questions, responses, and possible follow-ups. By practicing internally, your brain builds confidence and speed, so when the moment comes, your tongue delivers words effortlessly. Chunking sentences makes thinking easier. Instead of forming sentences word by word, learn to think in phrases. For example, rather than constructing, I am going to the store to buy vegetables, word by word, chunk it mentally, I am going to the store to buy vegetables. This trains your brain to process and output speech in natural segments, improving rhythm, fluency, and intonation. Immersion in English media is a natural way to reinforce thinking in English. While watching shows, listening to podcasts, or reading articles, focus on internalizing ideas, not just translating words. Repeat phrases mentally, summarize content in English, and predict what comes next. This strengthens the brain's capacity to process English automatically, training your tongue to follow without hesitation. Consistency is key. Smart learners integrate these mental practices into their daily routines. Even 15 to 20 minutes a day of conscious English thinking dramatically improves fluency. Unlike rote memorization, this approach trains the brain to produce language naturally, making real-life communication smoother and more confident.
Finally, embracing mistakes during mental practice is essential. When you make an error in your internal narration or rehearsal, correct it mentally and repeat. This strengthens neural pathways so your brain knows the correct form when speaking aloud. By thinking in English consistently, your fluency improves exponentially, and your tongue no longer struggles to keep up with your brain. By developing the habit of thinking in English, smart learners shortcut the traditional learning process, reduce translation delays, and speak confidently in any situation. This technique forms the foundation of smart English mastery, turning your brain into the ultimate fluency engine. When it comes to learning English, smart learners focus on building a vocabulary that works, not just memorizing long lists of random words. The goal isn't to know thousands of words, but to know the right words, phrases, and expressions that allow you to communicate clearly, efficiently, and intelligently. This approach saves time, strengthens brain connections, and ensures your tongue can produce language naturally in real-life situations. The first step is prioritizing high-frequency words and phrases. Instead of learning obscure words that rarely appear in conversation, focus on words that matter. These include everyday expressions, connectors like however, therefore, and meanwhile, as well as versatile verbs such as consider, improve, and achieve. Smart learners notice which words appear repeatedly in articles, podcasts, or conversations and focus on mastering them first. Contextual learning is crucial. Learning words in isolation is inefficient because your brain struggles to remember them without context. Instead, always learn vocabulary in sentences or real-life scenarios. For example, instead of memorizing the word complex, learn it in context. The instructions were complex, so I had to read them twice. Your brain forms associations between meaning, usage, and situation, making retrieval faster during conversation.
Chunking phrases instead of single words is another key strategy. Phrases like "in my opinion," "on the other hand," or "as far as I know" give you ready-made tools for communication. These chunks allow your brain to produce fluent sentences without pausing to think about grammar or word order. The tongue simply repeats patterns it has already internalized, creating smoother, more confident speech. Active usage strengthens memory. Seeing or hearing a word once isn't enough. Smart learners integrate new vocabulary into writing, speaking, and mental rehearsal. For example, after learning the word innovative, you might say aloud, "Our company is working on an innovative solution to reduce waste." Or mentally narrate your day, "I had an innovative idea to organize my tasks better." Repeated application in varied contexts makes words second nature. Semantic mapping is a powerful method for expanding vocabulary. Group words by meaning, topic, or function. For instance, under food, include words like ingredients, recipe, flavor, cuisine, taste, nutrition. Then create sentences connecting them. "I love exploring new cuisines because every flavor teaches me something about culture." This strategy strengthens neural connections, making retrieval effortless. Smart learners also learn synonyms and shades of meaning. Knowing multiple ways to express the same idea allows flexibility and precision. For instance, instead of always saying happy, you might also use joyful, pleased, thrilled, or content. Understanding subtle differences helps your brain choose the right word instantly, making speech more sophisticated and natural. Technology can be your ally. Use spaced repetition apps, vocabulary trackers, or flashcards to review words strategically. But remember, the most important aspect isn't memorization, it's integration into thinking and speaking. Whenever you encounter a new word, try to form sentences, narrate thoughts, or use it in conversation. This ensures your brain doesn't just recognize the word, but knows how to use it actively. Immersion and observation are essential for learning practical vocabulary. Watch shows, listen to podcasts, or read articles on topics you enjoy. Pay attention to recurring words and phrases, notice how they're used, and mimic them. Over time, your brain begins to internalize patterns of vocabulary usage, so your tongue can speak naturally without hesitation.
Reduce noise is another advanced technique. Imagine conversations or scenarios and deliberately include newly learned words. For instance, if you just learned collaborate, strategy, and deadline, create an internal dialogue. We need to collaborate efficiently to meet the project deadline. Our strategy will determine success. This practice links meaning, pronunciation, and usage in your brain, making recall during real conversation effortless. Finally, focus on quality over quantity. It's better to deeply know a smaller set of words and use them fluently than to memorize thousands you rarely employ. Smart learners prioritize practical, versatile vocabulary that boosts confidence and effectiveness. Over time, the brain naturally expands vocabulary through context, reading, and conversation without overwhelming memorization. By building a smart, context-rich vocabulary, you equip your brain to think, plan, and express ideas efficiently. Your tongue follows naturally, producing confident, precise, and intelligent English in any situation. Vocabulary becomes a tool for thought, not a memorization burden. The first principle is learning grammar in context, not in isolation. Instead of memorizing abstract rules, observe how grammar works in real sentences. For example, notice how native speakers use verb tenses in stories. "I was walking to the store when I saw a dog," versus "I walk to the store every day." By seeing grammar applied in meaningful contexts, your brain internalizes patterns automatically.
Over time, constructing correct sentences becomes instinctive. Prioritize functional grammar first. Smart learners focus on structures that appear most often in everyday communication. Present simple and continuous for daily routines and ongoing actions. Past simple and past continuous for storytelling and describing events. Future forms for plans and predictions. Conditionals and modals for expressing possibilities, advice, or necessity. Mastering these core structures allows fluent, coherent speech without being overwhelmed by less frequent rules.
Chunking grammar into patterns is highly effective. Instead of learning individual words and tenses separately, learn sentence patterns. For example, I have been verbing for time period, or if I do something, I will result. Practicing these chunks mentally and aloud trains your brain to recognize and produce correct structures automatically. Your tongue then follows without conscious grammar checks. Observation and imitation are key strategies. Listen to podcasts, watch series, or read articles, paying attention to how sentences are formed. Mimic not only vocabulary, but also sentence structure. Shadowing exercises, repeating exactly what you hear, train both your brain and tongue simultaneously, reinforcing grammar in a practical, memorable way. Error correction becomes a learning tool, not a punishment. Smart learners understand that mistakes reveal gaps in understanding. When you notice an error, analyze it quickly. Why did I say I go instead of I went? Then create a corrected mental version and repeat it aloud. This reflective practice strengthens neural connections, ensuring the correct structure comes naturally next time. Use self-generated examples. Don't just read or repeat grammar examples from textbooks. Create your own sentences using the structures you learn. For instance, if practicing past continuous, I was reading a book when the phone rang. Personal examples link grammar to real experiences, making rules easier to remember and apply spontaneously. Integrate grammar into mental rehearsal and storytelling. While narrating your day or imagining conversations, focus on correct structures. For example, I had finished my work before my friend arrived. We talked about our plans for the weekend. Repetition in meaningful scenarios allows your brain to internalize grammar patterns, so your tongue reproduces them effortlessly during actual speech. Learn grammar through questions and problem solving. Ask yourself, how do I explain past experiences? What structure should I use for a hypothetical situation? Answer in English, creating sentences and mini stories. This approach encourages active reasoning rather than passive memorization, training your brain to apply grammar intelligently in real time. Reading and listening reinforce grammar naturally. When you read articles or listen to podcasts, observe sentence flow, connectors, and tense usage. Instead of trying to consciously memorize every rule, notice patterns, replicate them in speaking exercises, and allow your brain to internalize grammar through exposure and context. Avoid overthinking perfection. Grammar is a tool for clear communication, not a strict test. Smart learners aim for clarity and natural expression. Small mistakes won't prevent understanding, but consistent exposure, pattern recognition, and active practice ensure your speech is fluent and correct most of the time. Finally, combine grammar with vocabulary and thinking in English. When your brain plans ideas, it automatically uses learned grammar patterns. Your tongue then follows naturally. This integration transforms grammar from a series of rules into a seamless, instinctive part of communication. By mastering grammar strategically, you free your brain and tongue to focus on meaning, expression, and clarity. English stops being a set of complicated rules and becomes a natural, flexible, and powerful tool for communication.
The first step is immersive listening. Surround yourself with English in everyday life. Podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube channels, and news broadcasts are excellent resources. The key is to choose content that is interesting, challenging, and relevant. When you enjoy what you're listening to, your brain pays attention more effectively, and learning becomes automatic rather than forced. Focus on understanding context, not individual words. It's common to get stuck trying to understand every word, but smart learners prioritize meaning over perfection. Instead of translating each word, listen for the main idea, tone, and intent. For example, if someone says, "I'm feeling under the weather," the phrase may be unfamiliar, but context clues help you understand they are unwell. Over time, your brain begins to process phrases and idioms naturally, speeding up comprehension. Shadowing is a key technique. While listening to native speakers, repeat aloud what you hear, matching pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm as closely as possible. Shadowing strengthens neural connections between auditory input and speech output, training your tongue to mirror natural speech patterns. Over time, your brain and tongue coordinate seamlessly, making your speech fluent and confident. Focus on predictive listening. As you listen, try to anticipate what comes next. For instance, if someone says, "I went to the store to buy," predict the next word mentally: milk, bread, or vegetables. This trains your brain to recognize sentence structures and conversational patterns, allowing faster processing and smoother responses in real conversations. Take notes strategically. While listening, jot down key words, phrases, or expressions you find useful. Later, review them and practice them in sentences or mental dialogues. This bridges the gap between passive listening and active usage, turning exposure into productive learning. Engage in interactive listening. Smart learners don't just consume content, they respond. Pause podcasts or videos and summarize aloud what you just heard. Ask yourself questions. What did the speaker mean? How would I respond in this situation? Answer in English. This reflective listening strengthens comprehension, vocabulary, and spontaneous speaking skills simultaneously. Listen to diverse accents and styles. Exposure to different English accents, American, British, Australian, or non-native speakers, trains your brain to recognize patterns across variations. It also prepares you for real-world conversations, making comprehension faster and more confident in any situation. Incorporate active listening into daily life. While commuting, cooking, or exercising, listen to English content. Narrate mentally or aloud what you hear. Describe ideas, summarize stories, or mimic sentences. Small, consistent practice integrates listening into your routine, reinforcing fluency effortlessly. The first principle is frequency over duration. Short, consistent speaking practice sessions every day are far more effective than occasional long sessions. Even 10 to 15 minutes of focused speaking repeated daily reinforces neural pathways, making sentences flow automatically. The brain begins to anticipate word patterns and structures, so your tongue moves naturally without conscious thought. Practice thinking aloud. Describe your actions, observations, or ideas in English as you go about your day. For instance, while preparing breakfast, narrate, "I'm chopping the vegetables. I need to make sure they are evenly cut. I hope the omelet turns out well." This exercise links thought to language, training your brain and tongue to operate in English seamlessly.
Use shadowing alongside speaking practice. Repeat sentences you hear in podcasts, audiobooks, or videos immediately after the speaker. Mimic pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. This bridges listening and speaking, helping your brain internalize natural speech patterns while giving your tongue a model to follow. Over time, this repetition creates fluent, confident expression without conscious effort. Engage in role-playing exercises. Simulate real-life scenarios, ordering at a restaurant, discussing a project, making phone calls, or debating opinions. Create dialogues mentally first, then speak them aloud. Role-playing trains your brain to respond in context, anticipating language and vocabulary so your tongue can communicate effortlessly. Use structured prompts. Smart learners keep a list of topics or questions to practice speaking. Examples: describe your favorite vacation, explain your daily routine, give advice on studying effectively. Answering these prompts aloud improves articulation, sentence formation, and confidence while your brain organizes thoughts quickly. Focus on meaning over perfection. Many learners hesitate because they fear making mistakes. Smart learners understand that fluency is about communicating ideas clearly, not perfect grammar or accent. If you forget a word, describe it, paraphrase, or use a synonym. The brain learns to maintain flow despite gaps, building adaptive communication skills.
Reduce noise. Record yourself. Listening to your own voice helps identify strengths, weaknesses, and areas for improvement. Note pronunciation issues, pauses, or unnatural sentence structures. Then re-record with corrections. This iterative process strengthens both awareness and fluency, ensuring your tongue follows your brain smoothly. Combine speaking with thinking in English. Mental rehearsal before speaking prepares your brain to produce sentences instantly. Imagine a conversation or story. Plan ideas and then articulate them aloud. This reduces hesitation, improves coherence, and makes your speech sound natural. Practice spontaneous speaking. Smart learners challenge themselves with unplanned topics. Pick a random subject, technology, travel, hobbies, and speak for 1 to 2 minutes without preparation. This trains your brain to access vocabulary, grammar, and phrases quickly, strengthening fluent expression in real-life situations. Use repetition strategically. Repeat words, phrases, or sentences aloud multiple times, focusing on pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Repetition strengthens neural pathways, ensuring that the tongue produces language automatically. Over time, speech becomes fluent, confident, and natural. Engage in conversations with real people. Whether with friends, online language partners, or tutors, live interaction provides authentic feedback and dynamic responses. Smart learners leverage these experiences to adjust vocabulary, grammar, and intonation in real time, improving adaptability and fluency. Integrate active listening with speaking. After listening to podcasts or watching videos, summarize out loud what you heard. Describe ideas, opinions, or stories in your own words. This transforms comprehension into production, training your brain to convert input into confident, articulate output. Finally, embrace the mindset of experimentation. Speak, make mistakes, correct yourself, and try new expressions. Fluency grows when you approach speaking with curiosity, not fear. Your brain and tongue learn to collaborate naturally, producing confident English effortlessly. By practicing smart speaking, you convert all your learning, vocabulary, grammar, listening, and thinking into real-world fluency. Your speech becomes fluid, your ideas clear, and your confidence unstoppable. Smart learners don't just know English, they can use it powerfully and intelligently in any situation. The first reason storytelling is powerful is contextual learning. Instead of memorizing isolated words or sentences, you embed vocabulary and grammar in meaningful contexts. For example, rather than learning the word astonished in isolation, you might say, "I was astonished when I saw the breathtaking view from the mountaintop." Here, the word is linked to an emotion, an action, and a scenario, making it easier to remember and recall naturally. Smart learners structure stories with clear frameworks. A typical framework includes introduction, setting the scene and introducing characters, conflict or challenge, something happens that drives the story, climax, the turning point or moment of greatest interest, resolution, how the situation is resolved, and reflection, personal insight or takeaway. By following this structure, your brain learns to organize ideas logically, while your tongue delivers sentences naturally and coherently. The structure provides a scaffold, reducing hesitation and improving overall fluency. Narrative practice enhances grammar naturally. When telling the story, you automatically use past tenses, conditionals, connectors, and descriptive language. For example, yesterday I went to the park, and while I was walking, I saw a dog chasing a ball. It reminded me of my childhood pet. Through narrative, grammar becomes embedded in natural expression rather than an abstract set of rules.
Vocabulary retention skyrockets through storytelling. Words used in stories are easier to remember because they are linked to actions, emotions, and scenarios. Smart learners deliberately create stories to practice new words and phrases. If you recently learned curious, explore, and mysterious, you could craft, "I was curious about the mysterious house at the end of the street, so I decided to explore it carefully." Your brain now has multiple connections for each word, ensuring fluent recall. Intonation and rhythm improve naturally. Storytelling encourages expressive speech. As you narrate, you naturally vary pitch, pace, and emphasis to make the story engaging. This mirrors real conversational speech, teaching your tongue to use natural patterns and flow rather than robotic or monotone delivery. Mental rehearsal of stories is a highly effective practice. Smart learners imagine stories in their minds before speaking aloud. They visualize characters, settings, and actions, then narrate them in English. This trains the brain to generate language creatively and coherently, while the tongue follows effortlessly. Over time, storytelling becomes second nature, even in spontaneous conversations. Interactive storytelling amplifies learning. Share stories with friends, online partners, or tutors. Ask questions and respond to feedback. Interactive storytelling simulates real-life communication, forcing your brain to adapt and your tongue to produce language on the fly. This builds both fluency and confidence. Use personal experiences for stories. Narrating real-life events strengthen emotional connections and engagement. For example, last week I tried cooking a new recipe. I accidentally added too much salt, but it turned out surprisingly delicious. Personal stories are memorable, motivating, and relatable, making English practice more meaningful. Combine storytelling with active listening. Listen to stories, podcasts, or audiobooks, then retell them in your own words. This reinforces comprehension, vocabulary, and narrative structure, while training your brain and tongue to convert input into fluent output. Challenge yourself with complex stories. Once comfortable with simple narratives, create stories with multiple characters, settings, or timelines. Incorporate dialogue, emotions, and descriptive details. This forces your brain to manage complexity, expanding fluency, creativity, and expressive range. Regular storytelling practice transforms English learning into a dynamic, memorable experience. Your brain learns to organize ideas, use grammar naturally, recall vocabulary, and convey meaning effectively. Your tongue follows, producing fluid, engaging, and confident speech. Storytelling makes English practical, enjoyable, and highly effective for smart learners.
By mastering storytelling, you not only speak more fluently, but also think more creatively and expressively in English, giving you a significant edge in communication, professional interactions, and social situations. The first step is active reading. Smart learners don't just skim texts, they analyze structure, vocabulary, and context. For example, reading an article about technology, you notice key terms, phrases, and sentence patterns. Highlight or jot down unfamiliar words and idioms, then practice using them in your own sentences. This step transforms passive exposure into active knowledge that your brain can retrieve effortlessly when speaking. Listening complements reading. After reading, listen to content on the same topic, a podcast, video, or audio lecture. Listening reinforces pronunciation, intonation, and rhythm. It also exposes you to natural sentence flow, connecting vocabulary and grammar to real speech. Smart learners actively compare what they read with how it's spoken, noticing differences in word stress, tone, and phrasing. Speaking completes the loop. After reading and listening, articulate your understanding aloud. Summarize the article or podcast in your own words, narrate it as a story, or discuss your opinion on the topic. This converts comprehension into active expression, strengthening neural pathways between thought and speech. The brain-tongue connection becomes automatic, producing fluent, confident speech. Repetition and reinforcement are key. By cycling through reading, listening, and speaking multiple times on the same topic, smart learners ensure deep learning. For instance, read an article about climate change, listen to a related podcast, and then narrate your summary aloud. Each step reinforces vocabulary, grammar, and ideas, making retrieval faster and more accurate in real conversations. Mindful integration enhances retention. While reading or listening, pause to predict what comes next, ask questions, or create mental summaries. For example, after reading a paragraph, ask yourself, what is the author's main point? How would I explain this in my own words? Then speak your response aloud. This reflective approach strengthens comprehension and expression simultaneously. Chunking and phrasing help speaking naturally. When summarizing or narrating, focus on sentences as units rather than individual words. For example, renewable energy is growing rapidly, and governments are investing in solar and wind power. However, challenges like storage and infrastructure remain. Thinking in chunks allows your brain to organize ideas efficiently, so your tongue produces fluent, confident speech. Vocabulary expansion is reinforced at every stage. Words and phrases encountered in reading are heard in listening and applied in speaking. This multi-sensory approach strengthens memory and usage. For example, if you learn mitigate, implement, sustainable while reading, hearing them in a podcast and using them in a spoken summary ensures they become natural parts of your vocabulary. Grammar and sentence structure are internalized naturally. Reading exposes patterns, listening demonstrates their usage, and speaking consolidates them. Instead of memorizing abstract rules, your brain observes and applies grammar in context. Over time, sentence formation becomes instinctive, and fluency flows effortlessly. Feedback amplifies effectiveness. Recording your spoken summaries or engaging with a language partner helps identify gaps, pronunciation issues, or unclear expressions. Smart learners use this feedback to refine both comprehension and expression effectively, closing the loop between input and output. Consistency is essential. A daily 30 to 45-minute reading, listening, speaking session can accelerate fluency far faster than traditional methods. The repetition of ideas in multiple forms trains your brain to process English efficiently and your tongue to produce speech smoothly.
The loop transforms passive exposure into active mastery. Practical applications make the loop effective. Use this method with articles, TED Talks, news reports, or podcasts about topics you enjoy or need for work or study. The content becomes meaningful and your brain is more engaged. When the learning process is enjoyable and relevant, fluency develops faster and more naturally. By mastering the reading, listening, speaking loop, smart learners integrate input and output seamlessly, ensuring that vocabulary, grammar, and ideas are encoded, processed, and expressed effectively. Your brain thinks in English, your tongue responds instantly, and conversations become confident, natural, and fluent. The first principle is mental flexibility. Smart learners don't rely on fixed sentence structures or limited vocabulary. They experiment with different ways to express ideas. For example, instead of always saying, "I like reading books," you might try, "I find reading novels incredibly enriching because they expand my perspective." This approach encourages your brain to think in multiple ways, and your tongue follows naturally, producing nuanced and expressive language. Brainstorming in English is a powerful technique. When you approach a topic, list as many words, phrases, or ideas as possible without filtering. For instance, if the topic is technology in education, write or say aloud, "online learning, virtual classrooms, AI tutors, personalized feedback, engagement, accessibility, creativity." This process trains your brain to generate ideas in English directly, bypassing translation and hesitation. Use metaphors and analogies. Smart learners employ figurative language to make ideas vivid and memorable. For example, learning English is like planting a tree. The more you nurture it daily, the stronger it grows. Metaphors help you think conceptually in English, strengthen memory retention, and enhance the elegance of your speech. Story-based problem-solving combines creativity and fluency. When explaining solutions or perspectives, frame them as mini stories. For instance, instead of saying, "We should reduce pollution," narrate, "Imagine a city where cars are electric, factories use clean energy, and children play in safe, green parks." Reducing pollution isn't just about numbers, it's about creating this reality. This engages both your brain and tongue, making speech persuasive and compelling. Questioning techniques foster critical thinking. Ask yourself open-ended questions in English. Why did this happen? How can I improve this? What are alternative solutions? Answer aloud or mentally in English. This trains your brain to think analytically and creatively in English, and your tongue to articulate nuanced responses effortlessly. Mind mapping for creative expression is particularly effective. Start with a central topic and branch out with ideas, vocabulary, examples, and opinions, all in English. For example, for healthy lifestyle, branches could be exercise, diet, stress management, hobbies, social life. Add sentences or mini stories under each branch. This visual organization enhances brain processing and prepares your tongue to express ideas fluently. Daily journaling in English also develops creativity. Write or speak about experiences, reflections, or hypothetical scenarios. For example, if I could invent a new app, it would help people track their mental health and suggest fun, personalized activities. This practice trains both your brain and tongue to generate ideas independently in English. Engage in debates or discussions. Even casual debates about current events or everyday topics enhance critical thinking. Smart learners focus on expressing opinions clearly, supporting arguments, and exploring multiple perspectives. This forces the brain to construct sentences on the spot and trains the tongue to articulate ideas confidently.
Read widely to inspire creativity. Exposure to diverse ideas, genres, and perspectives fuels original thought. While reading novels, essays, or opinion pieces, pay attention to how authors express ideas creatively. Then try to replicate or adapt those structures in your own speech. Your brain absorbs patterns, and your tongue reproduces them naturally. Practice improvisation. Randomly pick a topic and speak for a few minutes without preparation. For example, choose future of transportation and narrate your ideas aloud. Smart learners thrive on improvisation because it trains the brain to think quickly in English and your tongue to respond without hesitation. Finally, combine creative thinking with fluency habits. Use new vocabulary, sentence patterns, and grammar structures in your creative exercises. Think, narrate, and respond in English daily. Over time, your brain automatically generates intelligent, expressive ideas, and your tongue communicates them fluidly. By cultivating creative thinking in English, you elevate fluency from functional to exceptional. Your speech becomes engaging, persuasive, and adaptable in any context, giving you an edge in professional, academic, and social interactions. Creative thinking turns smart learners into confident, articulate English speakers who communicate with clarity, flair, and intelligence. The first key principle is active engagement. Passive reading or listening rarely leads to long-term retention. To strengthen memory, you must interact with content actively. Underline key words, write sentences, summarize paragraphs, or speak ideas aloud. For example, after learning the phrase "to make ends meet," use it in a sentence. Many students work part-time jobs to make ends meet while studying. Active use imprints language firmly in your mind. Spaced repetition is a scientifically proven technique. Instead of cramming, review vocabulary, phrases, or grammar rules at intervals, first after a few hours, then a day, a few days, and finally a week. Apps like Anki or Quizlet help automate this process, ensuring that words move from short-term memory to long-term memory. The repeated recall strengthens neural connections, making retrieval fast and natural. Visualization improves memory retention. Associate new words or phrases with images, scenarios, or emotions. For instance, for the word serene, imagine a calm lake at sunrise and mentally say, "The lake looked serene in the morning light." Linking language to mental images creates multiple pathways in your brain, making recall quicker and more vivid. Chunking language enhances recall. Memorizing individual words is less effective than memorizing phrases, collocations, or sentence patterns. For example, instead of remembering quickly, run, beautiful separately, learn she ran quickly across the beautiful garden. Chunking allows your brain to store and retrieve meaningful units, enabling fluent and confident speech. Storytelling strengthens memory naturally. When you embed new vocabulary or grammar in a story, your brain retains it more effectively. For example, if learning past continuous forms and new adjectives, narrate, "Yesterday, I was walking through a quiet, picturesque park when I noticed a curious squirrel chasing its tail." The story provides context, making recall effortless in future conversations. Repetition with variation is highly effective. Use the same words or phrases in multiple contexts. For example, if you learned innovative, create sentences like, "The company launched an innovative product." "She had an innovative approach to solving the problem." Innovation requires thinking outside the box. By practicing variation, your brain stores flexible usage, not rigid sentences, making speech adaptable and natural. Mental rehearsal consolidates memory. Visualize conversations, narrate daily experiences, or simulate scenarios in your mind using new vocabulary and grammar. For instance, imagine describing your workday in English.
I attended a meeting, presented a report, and discussed innovative solutions with my team. Mental rehearsal strengthens the link between comprehension and expression, so your tongue produces fluent speech automatically. Association techniques aid memory. Link new words or grammar to familiar concepts, sounds, or personal experiences. For example, if learning meticulous, recall a time you organized your workspace carefully. I am meticulous about keeping my desk clean. Personal connections create strong emotional and cognitive anchors, enhancing recall. Active testing improves retention. Regularly quiz yourself on vocabulary, idioms, and grammar rules. Writing sentences, summarizing articles, or speaking spontaneously challenges your brain to retrieve language actively. Active retrieval reinforces memory far better than passive review. Integrate all skills for maximum effect. Reading, listening, speaking, and writing strengthen memory collectively. Encounter a word while reading, hear it in a podcast, speak it aloud in sentences, and write your own examples. Each exposure solidifies neural pathways, making retrieval effortless and natural. Finally, patience and consistency are essential. Memory builds gradually. Smart learners practice daily, review strategically, and integrate new knowledge into meaningful use. Over time, vocabulary, grammar, and expressions become second nature. Your brain recalls instantly, and your tongue follows smoothly, allowing fluent and confident communication. By training your memory effectively, you ensure that all your English learning is permanent, accessible, and ready for real-world use. Vocabulary, grammar, and patterns stay alive in your mind, empowering your brain to think in English and your tongue to speak with ease, clarity, and confidence. The first step is acknowledging fear. Recognize that nervousness is normal. It happens when your brain anticipates mistakes, judgment, or misunderstanding. Instead of avoiding speaking, accept the feeling and consciously decide to act despite it. This mindset shifts focus from fear to practice and growth, allowing your brain to prioritize communication over perfection. Start small with low-pressure speaking exercises. Speak to yourself in front of a mirror, narrate daily tasks, or record short audio clips. For example, I'm making breakfast. I chopped vegetables and boiled eggs. Today I will go for a walk. These exercises build comfort with producing English, reinforcing neural pathways between thought and speech while minimizing judgment. The first principle is short, focused sessions. Instead of forcing yourself to study for hours, aim for 20 to 45-minute focused intervals. Quality trumps quantity. For example, spend 20 minutes listening to a podcast, 15 minutes shadowing sentences aloud, and 10 minutes narrating your own story. The brain retains information better in short, consistent bursts, and the tongue practices fluency without fatigue. Divide practice into skill-focused segments. Smart learners rotate between listening, speaking, reading, writing, and vocabulary. A typical routine could look like this. Listening, 10 to 15 minutes of a podcast or video. Speaking, 10 to 15 minutes of shadowing or narrating. Reading, 10 to 15 minutes of an article or story. Writing, 10 minutes of journaling, summarizing, or creating dialogues. This rotation ensures balanced development while keeping sessions dynamic and engaging. Incorporate English into daily life. Label objects around your house. Narrate your actions or think in English while commuting. For example, I'm making coffee. I need to boil water and grind the beans. These micro-practices accumulate over time, strengthening fluency without the pressure of formal study. Use thematic days or topics. Focus on a specific area each day. One day for storytelling, another for business English, another for casual conversation. This variety prevents monotony and ensures that multiple aspects of language are practiced systematically. Leverage technology wisely. Language apps, podcasts, and YouTube channels offer structured and interactive ways to practice. Set reminders and track progress. For instance, use an app for spaced repetition of vocabulary. Watch a short TED Talk for listening practice and record your summary for speaking practice. These tools make practice efficient and measurable. Blend passive learning with active learning. Passive learning includes listening to music, watching shows, or reading articles. Active learning includes speaking aloud, writing, or summarizing. Smart learners combine both. Passive exposure strengthens comprehension and vocabulary, while active use solidifies fluency and confidence. Create small, achievable goals. Avoid setting overwhelming targets like, "I'll speak English perfectly in a month." Instead, aim for daily wins. Learn 5 new words, narrate a short story, or shadow a 3-minute podcast segment. These small goals consistently build momentum and confidence over time. Track progress and reflect. Keep a journal of new words, phrases, expressions, and improvements in pronunciation or fluency. Reflect on what worked well and adjust your routine if necessary. Reflection ensures that practice remains efficient and focused, preventing burnout from repetitive, unproductive exercises. Incorporate enjoyment and curiosity. Choose content that interests you: stories, hobbies, news, or movies. Engaged learning is more memorable and less stressful. When you enjoy the process, the brain absorbs information effortlessly and the tongue produces fluent speech naturally. Balance intensity with rest. Avoid long, exhausting sessions that can lead to fatigue. Take breaks, move around, or switch skills during study. The brain consolidates learning during rest, making practice more effective than continuous strain. Combine routine with flexibility. A daily routine is essential, but flexibility allows adaptation to mood, energy, or context. On busy days, even 10 minutes of focused practice counts. Smart learners prioritize consistency over rigid schedules, ensuring long-term progress without burnout. Finally, practice with intention and joy. Focus on meaningful communication, not perfection. The brain learns best when engaged, curious, and stress-free. By establishing a daily, balanced routine, you make English learning a natural and integrated part of life. Fluency grows steadily, confidence increases, and the tongue begins to produce language effortlessly, ready for any real-world conversation. The first principle is learning words in context. Isolated memorization rarely works. Instead of memorizing the word elaborate alone, learn it in a sentence. Could you elaborate on your idea? Context links the word to meaning, usage, and grammar, making it easier for your brain to retrieve naturally during conversation. Focus on high-frequency words and phrases first. Certain words and expressions appear often in daily conversations, business, or storytelling. Examples include however, in addition, on the other hand, I believe that. Learning these core expressions builds a solid foundation for fluent communication. Use the 3-step method: encounter, understand, and apply. Encounter: read, listen, or hear a new word or phrase. Understand: note its meaning, pronunciation, and context. Apply: use it in sentences, stories, or conversations. For instance, after hearing meticulous in a podcast, you understand it means showing great attention to detail. Then say aloud, "She is meticulous about her work, checking every detail carefully." Active application cements retention. Create thematic vocabulary lists. Organize words by topic: business, travel, emotions, technology, or hobbies. For example, under travel, list itinerary, excursion, sightseeing, reservation, adventure. Studying them in clusters reinforces connections, making recall faster and usage more natural. Use mnemonic devices and associations. Link words to images, stories, or personal experiences. For example, associate gregarious, which means sociable, with a vivid image of a friendly person at a party. The emotional and visual connections make words stick permanently in memory. Practice active recall. Don't just review lists, actively test yourself by writing sentences, narrating stories, or speaking aloud. For example, pick 5 words and create a short story. The adventurous traveler was meticulous in planning his itinerary, visiting each sightseeing spot with enthusiasm. Active use ensures the brain retrieves words automatically during real conversation. Use spaced repetition for long-term retention. Review vocabulary after hours, days, and weeks to reinforce memory. Apps like Anki or Quizlet are ideal for automated review, but even a simple notebook with daily revisits works. Spaced repetition strengthens neural connections, making words instantly accessible. Learn collocations and phrases, not just single words. Words rarely appear alone. They combine naturally with others. For instance, learn make a decision instead of only decision, or pay attention instead of attention. Collocations teach your brain natural combinations, improving fluency and sentence structure. Incorporate new vocabulary into speaking and writing daily. After learning words, use them in conversations, narrations, or journaling. For example, today I meticulously organized my study notes to ensure nothing was overlooked. Repeated use bridges comprehension and production, embedding words in active memory.
Engage with varied content. Read books, articles, listen to podcasts, or watch videos in different genres. Exposure to diverse contexts introduces new words naturally and demonstrates practical usage, enhancing understanding and retention. Mindful practice enhances vocabulary integration. Don't just memorize, think, speak, and write in English consistently. For example, after reading an article, summarize it aloud using new words. Your brain connects input with output, and your tongue learns to produce rich, confident speech. Finally, patience and consistency are essential. Vocabulary mastery grows gradually. Smart learners practice daily, review strategically, and use words in context. Over time, your vocabulary becomes intuitive, your speech richer, and your expression more versatile. By building vocabulary like a pro, you ensure that your ideas are communicated clearly, creatively, and confidently, giving your speech depth, sophistication, and impact. Words become your tools, fluency becomes effortless, and your English transforms from functional to exceptional. Fluency isn't just about grammar and vocabulary, it's also about using idioms and expressions naturally. Native speakers often rely on these phrases to convey meaning, emotion, and nuance. Smart learners understand that mastering idioms and expressions elevates speech, makes conversations more engaging, and helps you sound confident and natural. The first principle is understanding meaning in context. Idioms cannot be translated literally. For example, break the ice doesn't mean smashing ice, it means starting a conversation in a friendly way. Understanding idioms in real-life contexts ensures that your brain associates them with situations, emotions, and actions, making recall easier. Learn idioms gradually and thematically. Instead of memorizing dozens of idioms at once, focus on 3 to 5 per day or week. Organize them by theme: emotions, work, relationships, or everyday life. For instance, idioms about emotions include on cloud 9, very happy, feeling blue, sad, and butterflies in the stomach, nervous. Thematic learning makes usage intuitive. Practice active usage immediately. After learning an idiom, create your own sentences or mini stories using it. For example, after learning hit the nail on the head, say, when Jane explained the problem, she really hit the nail on the head. This connects comprehension with production, strengthening memory and fluency. Use idioms in conversations naturally. Smart learners don't force expressions, they integrate them where appropriate. During casual chats or storytelling, insert idioms seamlessly. For example, narrating a surprise event, I was on cloud 9 when I got the news about my promotion. Gradual incorporation builds confidence and makes speech sound native-like.
Reduce noise. Combine idioms with body language and tone. Idioms often carry emotion, so matching your voice, facial expressions, and gestures enhances meaning. For example, saying, I was on edge all day with tense posture and a serious tone communicates stress more effectively than words alone. Your brain links idioms with emotional expression, making recall instinctive. Create idiom flashcards or notebooks. Write idioms, meanings, and example sentences. Review them regularly and practice speaking them aloud. Spaced repetition ensures long-term retention, while active recall strengthens neural pathways for natural production. Learn idioms through media exposure. Movies, TV shows, podcasts, and YouTube channels are rich sources of authentic idioms. Pay attention to usage, context, and tone. For instance, hearing "call it a day" in a video about work helps you understand how and when to use it naturally. Practice idioms in writing and journaling. Include expressions in your essays, diary entries, or social media posts. Writing reinforces memory and provides opportunities to experiment with creative usage. For example, after finishing the project, we decided to call it a day and celebrate our success. Understand the nuance and appropriateness of idioms. Not every idiom fits every situation. Smart learners observe tone, formality, and context. For instance, spill the beans is casual, suitable for friendly conversations, but not formal reports. Knowing when to use expressions is key to sounding intelligent and fluent. Review, revise, and recycle idioms. Repeated exposure is critical. Use newly learned idioms in stories, summaries, and conversations. Each repetition strengthens your memory and increases natural integration. Over time, idioms become part of your fluent expression, used effortlessly and confidently. Finally, embrace creativity with idioms. Try combining idioms with storytelling, humor, or descriptive speech. For example, I was on cloud 9 until my cat knocked over the vase, and then I hit the roof. Creative usage reinforces memory, enhances expression, and makes speaking fun and engaging. By mastering idioms and expressions, you make your English vivid, native-like, and impactful. Conversations become richer, storytelling more expressive, and your speech more engaging. Idioms are the secret tool that smart learners use to communicate with flair, confidence, and authenticity. Fluency is not only about vocabulary, grammar, or idioms, it's also about pronunciation and accent. Smart learners know that clear speech builds confidence, improves comprehension, and ensures that your ideas are understood effortlessly. The first principle is listening attentively to native speakers. Pronunciation is learned primarily through listening. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, or follow YouTube channels where native speakers communicate naturally. Pay attention to word stress, intonation, rhythm, and connected speech. Notice how words blend, vowels shorten,
or certain consonants are softened. Listening carefully trains your brain to internalize sounds, making accurate pronunciation automatic. Practice shadowing for fluency and accent. Shadowing is repeating speech immediately after hearing it, mimicking tone, pace, and emphasis. For example, listen to "I can't believe how amazing this experience was," and repeat aloud, matching pronunciation and rhythm. Shadowing trains your tongue and mouth muscles, aligning them with natural speech patterns. Focus on word stress and sentence rhythm. English is stress-timed, meaning certain syllables and words are emphasized while others are shortened or unstressed. For example, in the sentence, "I want to go to the supermarket," notice stress on want and supermarket, while smaller words like to and the are lighter. Correct stress patterns make your speech more intelligible and natural. Use minimal pairs for sound clarity. Minimal pairs are words that differ by only one sound, like ship and sheep, or bat and bet. Practicing them improves your pronunciation and ensures that similar sounds are distinct. Smart learners repeat them aloud, in isolation and in sentences, embedding accurate sounds into memory. Record yourself and compare. Self-recording is a powerful tool. Speak a sentence, then listen to your recording alongside a native speaker's version. Identify differences in stress, vowel length, or intonation. Repeat until your version closely matches the native model. Over time, your brain and tongue adjust to accurate pronunciation naturally.